There's a million reasons why 2025 is so important, but when you look at 2026, the schedule could be brutal.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We're dapping it up with the Darrell Dapprich, Montgomery radio legend, hanging out with us today. We'll talk about Baylor, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, how crucial those three road trips are. But Darrell, like we all agree that 2025, this upcoming season for the Auburn Tigers football program, is important, crucial, and we've talked about it from a million different angles regarding Hugh Freeze, regarding recruiting, regarding quarterback development. The list goes on and on. But when you look at it and say, okay, Auburn's schedule in 2025, pretty manageable. And then things change in 2026, we assume, with Auburn potentially probably playing teams that it hasn't played this past season or who it will play this season because it's a conference. We need to play each other. And so you assume Auburn will play LSU, Ole Miss, Florida, South Carolina, Tennessee. A much harder draw, in my opinion, than what they've had, last season and this upcoming season.
Brutal draw. I mean, it really flips, especially, Zach, because Florida seems to be getting better. Yeah. I kind of had them written off last year. Their recruiting has gained a ton of momentum. Napier turned it around a little bit. Tennessee was in the college football playoff. South Carolina on the ascent. Mississippi State would be in there as well. That would be probably one of your only breathers. Ole Miss, LSU. I mean, it's a gauntlet. And then, let's just be honest, you play Georgia and Alabama.
You'd have to assume. You'd have to assume
that on top of that. Right. It could be 2026 could be the most difficult schedule that Auburn's faced in the history of its football program. I don't want to sound dramatic. It could be, I'm saying. We don't know what could happen from year to year. And we're speculating because we're assuming of where the programs are in the current state. Things can change from year to year. Just like some of these schools got better, they could also get worse. These programs can take a step back. It happens. It happens to a lot of different programs. So that being said, if it doesn't, it makes 2025 so important for all the reasons you said. But more than anything else, what I feel like when I thought about this subject that you broached with me and I started thinking about it, doing a deep dive, the sole reason why 2025 is so important, the most important reason, is because of what lies on the horizon in 2026. You have to gain momentum with wins and be a contender again and keep recruiting churning because 2026 could be absolutely brutal and you don't want to go into the abyss.
And from a timing standpoint, you got to hope that it's there, right? I mean, that's when this first really awesome class for Hugh Freeze, they'll all be draft eligible guys. They'll all be, true juniors or redshirt sophomores. When you talk about the Cam Colemans and all these freshmen that we just saw finish up a first season at Auburn, that was super impressive. And so then all these guys are going to be the veterans in the room. And so, Auburn should be, from a personnel standpoint, ready to compete, but we're not questioning the roster anymore. Like we are past that. It's, can you prove in 2025 that you can use these guys and get the most out of them? And a lot of that focus is going to be on quarterback, rightfully so, because that's been the biggest question mark so far, and it's the most important. But does Cam Coleman take that step? Does Malcolm Simmons take that step? Does Jay Crawford take that step? DeMarcus Riddick, Malik Blockton, Caleb Harris. Thankfully, that list goes on and on and on, Darrell. But this is going to be a prove it year in 2025 because 2026, the training wheels are 100% off for Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, I'm going to say something here that's probably going to upset a lot of people, but it's the elephant in the room. I've just got to be honest. We don't live in our fears, but it would be unrealistic to not even mention that a problem could emerge in 2026 that we're not even discussing if Auburn doesn't have the kind of season it needs to have in 2025. You just went through a list of players. They're going to be crucial. And this is the class. What if those players aren't here? Because what's happened, I mean, again, I'm not wishing this. I'm just in the day and age that we are in college football, and it disgusts me. So I'm not wishing any of this or hoping it into existence.
I understand. Yeah.
I'm saying that the loyalties and some of the things that happen when people chase dollars or chase, if they want to go play somewhere that's been in playoffs consistently in the playoff picture, if you don't prove on the field that this is the program for you to get that done and accomplish some of those goals, who's even to say that in 2026 the roster looks the same?
If that were to happen, you'd have to assume some really bad things happen in 2025. You'd have to assume that the offense doesn't come together, the quarterback play suffers, and you go 6-6. And you just, it doesn't pan out, because a lot of these guys all of them, literally all of them, they're all on the roster, chose to not leave. They chose to stick it out and believe in what is being built. And they recognize that they're the foundation of it. It's literally what they signed up for. And Auburn has done a great job at player retention. They keep guys committed and they keep guys on the roster. And then the guy who entered the transfer portal that was the most detrimental or could have been the most detrimental, Amaris Williams, they got him to come back. And that's being severely underreported when people talk about how good Auburn was in the transfer portal. So you're asking the right question. But my response to that is, if that happens, I think it's already we're already too far gone, and it's like a reset and a new starting point would have to be discussed probably before that happened. I think we would know it's it's about to get bad. I think we'd feel it coming before they all entered the portal.
So to be perfectly clear, this isn't anything I'm predicting or anything like that. This is a what-if scenario, and it is the worst-case scenario. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I'm just saying that Auburn has done a tremendous job at player retention. But don't you feel like, Zach, there is a window with that? There is a certain limit to that you have to at some point say, all right, we're showing it on the field. The proof of concept thing for 2 years, 3 years. They've done a great job at this. Will that continue? Can that continue? Is it sustainable? Is there a slowing down or a really not great surge of momentum right now in recruiting, which could change in a moment's notice, and I feel like it will? Is there a correlation between that and saying, I want to wait and see, show me? If that happens in a recruiting bubble, would it happen on a roster retention level? It's just something, again, I would hate that, and I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I am only making this point to say to make the point of how important 2025 is. In my opinion, going into this year, it is, in a very long time, Zach, the most important year in Auburn football in a very long time. Period.
Yeah, I mean, if it doesn't go well this year, it feels super grim for multiple reasons. Because of a roster retention standpoint, as well as the schedule's about to get tougher. And then it's if you do have to make that decision as far as who's leading your program at that point, then it's is this what you want to bring them into? The timing isn't certainly ideal either. So yes, 2025 is super important. I do think if you go 7-5 or 8-4 or better, you're okay. But we do need to bring up the point, and that's exactly what you did.
And I think that if someone was to give me some truth serum and say, what do you think happens? I feel very confident that this year is going to be a definite milestone type of year for Auburn, where they will show marked improvement. They will get some big wins, and we're not going to have to worry about that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty agreed upon unanimously, both with Auburn people and folks outside of Auburn that are interested, is we're going to know one way or the other, and we'll know pretty quick. And a lot of it has to do with those first few games of the season. Man, you talk about important ones. Let's discuss exactly what needs to happen next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. Darrell, we're talking about what needs to happen this year. FanDuel has Auburn at 7.5 wins on the season. And depending on the day you ask me is when, how I feel, if it's going to be 7-5 or 8-4. For the last week or so, I've been in the 8-4 camp. And so right now I'm taking the over on that. And of course, you can also bet on Auburn Baylor. That line is Auburn -2.5. I do think that line will widen a little bit more before kickoff, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right. So if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. $200 in bonus.
Summer money.
Yes. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. The road trip to Baylor, the road trip to Oklahoma for the first time, and of course, the road trip to College Station to take on the Texas A&M Aggies. Darrell, I want you to rate the level of importance of those three games from most important to least important.
Baylor is the most important. I think Baylor there's a really swell of confidence and momentum from hearing and reading things, especially on that side of the country, that Baylor is very, very dangerous. They're a very good football team and that they should handle business with Auburn. We feel like it's going to be a very, very good football game, very close. So that game, and it sets the tone. It absolutely sets the tone for the season. So to me, that's the most important game on Auburn's schedule until they get later on in the year when they become more important, but you have to win for them to become more important. So right now, sure, I'd rank Baylor 1, Oklahoma 2, on the sole purpose that it's the Jackson Arnold narrative, the way Auburn lost that game to Oklahoma last year. I think it's more winnable than I think it's more winnable than the Texas A&M game as far as lines and spreads and that kind of thing. So I definitely would have Oklahoma 2 and then Texas A&M 3. And I think Auburn has to win out of those 3, 2 of the 3, in my opinion, to reach some of the goals they need to reach.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. Everything you just said. Now, would you also say that order of Baylor, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M is the order of most winnable, or would you push back on that? Because that's where I'm standing on it.
I think it's exactly that. I think Baylor, yes, most winnable in that order. Baylor, number 1, Oklahoma. And I get that, these are all road games. I just think that Oklahoma might have a little bit more as an SEC squad. Not to undersell Baylor. I get it. They're loaded. The question mark for me is that Oklahoma's defense played pretty well last year. They kept them in some games, okay?
Yeah.
When their offensive line was in shambles and the receivers were out there, down to the third or fourth string. Their defense is a little bit salty. Baylor's defense, I have to believe it to see it. They have to prove to me they can stop somebody. So although Baylor probably has a more prolific offense, Oklahoma's defense kept them and won them some games. And then A&M, it's just Kyle Field's a different animal. And I know these other 2 games are road games too, but Kyle Field with Auburn coming off a win last year against Texas A&M, they seem to swap victories a lot. This series seems to be a trade victories. I'm a big believer in Marcel Reed, the quarterback. I think Texas A&M's got rosters just littered with 5 stars. So I think that's going to be a little more difficult. But that's another team. That's another program, Zach, from year to year can be schizophrenic. One year they're picked top 10 in the country and they win 9 or 10 games, and the next year they struggle to win 5 or 6. You can see how there can be a transition from one year to the next. So we'll see which Texas A&M shows up this year.
Yeah, with that being at home, I do think it's tricky. I mean, I know we all kind of make fun of the 12th man stuff, but it is a good home field environment. And I'm high on Marcel Reed. I think so many quarterback conversations around the SEC happen, and there's a few guys that aren't brought up. Marcel Reed isn't brought up. I think Taylon Green is a better quarterback at Arkansas that people give him credit for. And then weirdly, Diego Pavia probably doesn't come up as often as he should. But man, he made sure that he would come up in conversations this week with him saying that Vandy's going to run Tennessee. That's objectively awesome. Good for Vandy. That's great. But I do think I do think there's just the level of quarterback play in this conference this year. I think it's flying under the radar because, we talk about like the upside of Jackson Arnold. You look at the upside of John Mateer at Oklahoma. You look at the upside of Marcel Reed at Texas A&M. All of these places that Auburn plays, like their quarterbacks, they have dud games, but then you also can look at them and have these moments of like, man, if they put it all together and they're consistent, they're an NFL player.
And it's because there's an opportunity with a lot of quarterbacks that went out the door last year, that Jalen Milrose and, obviously the Georgia quarterback that transferred to Miami and Missouri's quarterback. And, there's guys that left. The Tennessee kid, that Nico, that was supposed to be such a stud. Yeah, he exactly. So there is opportunities to go up the quarterback ladder, to climb up the quarterback ladder this year, because 4 or 5 guys you kind of felt like were going to be there this year are gone, and then a couple left because of graduation as well. So of course Sellers, still there, obviously. Sure. Nussmeier. There's some studs, and if you this year more than ever,
thankfully we don't have to play those guys.
Yes. So this year
arguably
more than
the 4 top quarterbacks in the conference of Arch Manning, Garrett Nussmeier, Lenoris Sellers, and DJ Lagway, in no particular order. But you can make the case that those are the 4 top guys. Auburn avoids all of them. And I think that's a big deal this year.
It's a huge deal. And maybe when they have to play those teams next year, those guys will be gone in the NFL, which is another point about.
And depending on what you think about Austin Simmons, some people love Simmons at Ole Miss, and it's like you avoid him too.
Not enough to know to judge, not enough to go on.
Wouldn't be shocked if he was as good as people are saying. Also, wouldn't be shocked if he was just kind of average. I wouldn't be shocked either way. He's in a Lane Kiffin system, so he's probably going to be decent.
Yeah, I just don't know what you're basing that purely on projection and not what you've seen on the field, because there's just not enough tape there. Sure. But my point is that this year, more than ever, you could make the argument that if you had a quarterback like Jackson Arnold that was the 6th or 7th best quarterback in the conference, and that sounds like kind of mid, it's not. That would go a long way in Auburn reaching the goals that it needs to reach this year. Yeah. And there's an opportunity because now it's top heavy. The top 4, I think, are really, really good as they've been in a year in the conference. The bottom 4, it's
but all the folks in the middle that aren't in that top 4, maybe not in that bottom 4, the upside's tremendous. Jackson Arnold's a part of that conversation.
Yes.
Like Jackson Arnold's upside is tremendous.
So is Reed's.
Marcel Reed's upside is tremendous. Marcel Reed. I think Taylon Green's really good. I think his team stinks, but I think he's really, really good. Bo Prabula, who was a backup at Penn State, who's now going to be the starter at Mizzou. I think he's super athletic and has the traits that you want. It's just he's unproven. So many of the mid, that next tier quarterback in the SEC, it just has tremendous upside. And you just got to hope that Jackson Arnold is one of the guys that hits.
Absolutely. Because if he is, I think there's so many components this year that Auburn has around him that is built for his success, that if he hits, we could Auburn's ceiling then, I think, even rises more from what we've talked about, to be realistic. So there's a lot there, but quarterback play and you make a great point about some of these quarterbacks being under the radar. Where you got now the kid that's, when we talk about these 3 games being ranked, I think Sawyer Robertson's better than any of the 3 that Auburn will see in Baylor, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M.
I'm okay with that.
Just an opinion, but I think, and I'm not talking about by a large margin, I'm talking about barely, but I would take him. I like Mateer. I watched him play, but I have a really big question about the type of competition he played against.
Well, the people who like John Mateer, they love him. They're like, oh, he's going to be. I'm like, well, hold on. Let's
let him play.
And the whole argument with well, Cam Ward did it. I'm like, not the same thing.
Cam
Ward
did it
was at
against
Washington State in one of the best years in the Pac-12 ever.
Amen.
Yeah. No, we're in agreement there.
And then of course Marcel Reed, we talked about, has a lot of upside, but I still think Sawyer Robertson's did a little bit more so far.
Yeah, I think Marcel Reed's a player for sure. I think he's flying under the radar a little bit. So, all right, I want to wrap up the show with a little bit of a pop quiz for Darrell Dapprich. I did not tell you I was going to do this. That's coming up in just a second, right here on Locked On Auburn. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. I've been thinking about this for a while, and we'll do a full show around this at some point. I'm still brainstorming and solidifying my stance on a few of these things, but I'm going to ask you.
I have PTSD when you said pop quiz, by the way, with what just transpired, but let's roll.
Sure.
I don't want any more quizzes, any more tests.
I won't hand out a grade, though. I won't hand out a grade. I want to see no fail. Spoiler, you're going to pass. You're going to pass.
All right. I'm ready.
How many position groups on Auburn's roster would you say is top 6 in the SEC?
That's a great question. 3.
What?
3?
Receiver. What else?
Offensive line and secondary.
Okay.
And it didn't even take me a second to. I mean, I literally felt
Let's split secondary into corners and safeties.
Okay. Well,
corner, yes. Corner's top
3.
6.
Yeah, I would. Oh man, safeties. Just because of depth with safeties, and Caleb Harris, I'd put against anybody. It's is Sylvester Smith, whoever plays that other safety, going to play at that level? So I would be hesitant to put the safeties in the top 6. But I'd put safeties in the top 8, but I definitely
top
put
half.
Corner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Offensive line and receivers in the top 6. I'd put those 3 in the top 5.
That was going to be a follow-up question is if I change it to 5, does it change the answer?
Yes.
It probably doesn't.
Doesn't change the answer.
O-line, I'm a little lower on than you. Like I would think about it, but I think they have a top 6 O-line just based off of experience. And I mean, I think you've got 2, maybe 3 guys that are NFL players on the O-line, which is awesome. 2 of them are draft picks, and then we'll see what happens with, I think, between either Murphy or Too Tall putting it all together, or Jeremiah Wright or Dylan Wade. Like I think somebody else other than Connor Lew and Xavier Chaplin get a shot at the NFL. Like I think you've got 3 NFL guys on that team, on that.
And I like them as a unit.
Awesome.
I'm not just rating them on starters, which I think the starting 5 is
that matters,
5.
right? Yeah.
I think as a unit, the depth there is something that Auburn hasn't had. When you're able to go to your number 2 guy on the depth chart, I really like too. And so the overall unit as a whole, especially if you have to go into your depth, I like. I think there's some guys that are backing up players at Auburn this year. I thought I would never be alive to hear this or see it or say it. There's some guys on Auburn's offensive line that could start on other teams in the SEC. They're backups.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Especially how I've heard how much Tyler Johnson's progressed.
Tyler Johnson's part of that.
Yeah, I mean
DeAndre Carter would start places, assuming he doesn't start at one of the guard spots. Whoever doesn't start between Murphy and Miller,
absolutely,
is a starter.
Yeah,
so yeah, for sure. The safety conversation, as far as like where you rank them, is interesting because the upside and overall talent, I would say, is top 6, but that's not all of it. I mean, so much more goes into playing safety than just athleticism, right? And they don't have like a veteran in that room, really. I mean, we talk about it and it's all like, is Sylvester Smith the oldest guy? I
think he is. I mean, if you got Fagans, Harris, Smith, and Eric Winters.
Tay Seymour, I'm not really expecting Tay Seymour to play, but like, can he be an asset in meetings and stuff? Like, I just don't know enough about him. I don't know enough about him.
No, I think this unit has the potential to have a very high ceiling. And if we were having this conversation next year, could definitely, with the Winters and Fagans and Harris, could be top 5 next year. Absolutely. But let's get them some experience and get them some seasoning like the corners have already. Look, everywhere, and I got to give the proper credit to Justin Ferguson too, who really did a great deep dive on Pleasant and Strader. I keep underselling them. Every time I talk corners or think corners, I say Crawford Lee. To have two guys like that, Camp Anthony, to have three dudes like that aren't your starting outside corners that can come in and get snaps. Yes, I really, really high on the corners.
Yeah, Strader is going to be a factor for sure. It sounds like Anthony's getting more of a nod at nickel, which is fine. I have no issue with that. Get them all on the field. Find a way to get them all on the field that makes sense. No issue with that. After that, I'm not quite as sold on some of these guys. Like Pleasant's a Tulane kid, right?
Yep, sure is.
Yeah, like I'd be a little surprised if he had a big role that wasn't from an injury. I'd be a little surprised by that. But if he's good enough, put him on the field. That'd be great. Worst case is he beats somebody out, right? That's awesome. So,
well, isn't there certain packages where you could? I mean, that's the thing too. There's certain packages where three of those corners and Champ Anthony could be on the field at the same time.
Well, I think Strader would be ahead of them, obviously with Lee and all that. I think Woodby's better. I'd rather see Woodby or Donovan Starr on the field. Yeah. That's just a gut reaction. I can't back that up, but I would think that those guys are better. So that's just my opinion. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Could be wrong. Yeah. He's got experience over them, and that matters. So we'll see. It's just such a good problem. Such a good problem to have in the corner room for sure. Darrell Dapprich. Who knows where on the planet you are right now, but how can people check out everything that you've got going on?
Is that an ice bucket over my head giving it away? The ice
that
bucket
looks like the hotel ice bucket.
Yeah, ice bucket. All right. You can catch me on X, DAP6410, Instagram, Darrell Dapp, Wednesdays and Fridays, Locked on Auburn, Sunday nights, The Barn.
Yes. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked on Auburn.